Something something robots, everyone. It's Deep Dive Zone, a Sonic review series for fans of all shapes and sizes. That phoned-in intro aside, we are talking about a certain robot today called E102 Gamma. So, we've got 5 other characters in this game, and it's a big step up from last week when we talked about Big the Cat, but I really like Gamma because it's one of the most interesting ideas for a Sonic story.
Oh yeah, it's a very unique premise and a very different angle for a story. Biggs was different too, but in a different way than this.
I think I agree, but I don't think it was very perfectly executed.
I'm just saying, like, setup wise.
Setup-wise, yeah,
I'm
I
not
do
saying
agree.
execution. I'm not spoilers. This is executed pretty well, I would say, but I wasn't talking about execution.
Decently. No, just setup-wise, yeah, it's an interesting setup.
Well, because we've had stories about robots, and we've had stories about roboticized persons, but we haven't really had a story with a badnik, because that's something different from
Right,
either of those things.
right, that is true.
Yes, well, then those were in other media too.
Yeah, we never had anything really like this at all in the games.
Well, the games are only just now starting to get really ambitious with their
Right,
stories. Sonic 3
true,
tried a little bit, but like they're ratcheting it up.
right.
And Gamma, just as a concept, I like him a lot. He's a robot, but he's very cute for how much of a giant robot he is.
Gamma is incredibly cute.
Yeah,
Because he is definitely an evolution of the Egg Robo design. He just has a... It kind of looks like he's wearing like a visor, like a hat, but he's got the same sort of spindly limbs and all that. And, yeah, he really is just an Eggman robot at the start. And I really enjoy, these scenes where it's mostly just Dean Bristow hamming it up as Dr. Eggman in the Mystic Ruin space.
I love how immersive it is. Literally starting out in first person with the classic green color filter for Robo Vision, and you're just thrown right into it with no sort of explanation. And you get to see it play out.
And your stages are not even automatically like real stages. The final egg is presented as a training course here, which I don't know how that connects with Sonic Story, but we're not going to worry about it. But Gamma's gameplay is this sort of run and gun setup where you lock onto targets and you shoot basically all at once, and it gives you time bonuses.
I am a big fan of this. Locking on to like 10 different targets and then releasing and getting this huge combo is one of the most satisfying things ever.
This was one of their first responses to a really common fan request, which is that kids kept sending in requests for them to give Sonic a gun.
I don't get
Oh,
those
wow.
requests. I want to find one of the children who asked that and just ask them why.
Because guns are cool. I'd not
Well,
heard
it's kid
that,
brain.
but yeah,
I guess, yeah.
it's kid brain.
I guess, yeah, that's a good point.
That's very enlightening. I will take this factoid and store it for later when we get to talk about a certain dark hedgehog.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing that I was going to say is that if you were to extrapolate what you would do if you gave Sonic a gun, Gamma isn't as fast as Sonic. He's still fairly fast, and
Right.
having the lock-on system as that, because you don't need to aim very much, is actually one of the most clever things they could have done to have a game where you have a gun but you're still fast.
It ends up feeling less like a shooter and more like almost like Ace Combat or almost like a pop-up gallery shooter. It's fun gameplay and super I guess original is the best word.
Yeah, we mentioned it lightly. Obviously, you're blasting things, which is fun, but also they give you time bonuses. And so
Yeah.
the missions are timed, but not in a way that would make me frustrated or stressed out, but in a much more lax way because I feel like I have more control. Because they are timed, but obviously, if you do well, you get more time. And so you can actually have a lot more time if you're just good at the game. And so, really, the time isn't a huge deal.
Unless you screw up really hard, yeah.
Well, plus, if you do screw it up, you can always just come back to a checkpoint and get some free time. So
Right.
it's not a big deal.
Yeah, it doesn't make you
Yeah.
restart if you run out of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
honestly.
But after you beat Final Egg, you get your first boss fight against another E-Series unit, in this case, E101 Beta, which Eggman refers to as your brother and says, okay, in the English version he says Beta is more advanced than the Gamma, which doesn't make any sense because he was built first. In the Japanese version, he says that Beta is more experienced. So that's a mistranslation.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense than everything else.
Oh, yeah, that does make sense.
But I wouldn't put it past Eggman to like just make the follow-up worse for no apparent reason.
That's also funny,
Well,
yeah.
my note was that he cheapened out after the first model, and he just used worse parts after that.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
very
yeah.
much
Gamma's
in
just supposed to be the
character.
like cost-saving, like mass-produced version of Beta.
Gamma's the one that that the defense contractor actually sells to the government.
Yeah, Beta
Beta's
was like
the
an
original
engineering sample.
prototype. Exactly. Beta's the original prototype.
Amazing.
I will say, when I was younger, I was always confused by this because I'm like, why the heck would a robot need to train? But now in our modern age, I'm realizing, oh shoot, these are actually just like early sci-fi interpretations of AI. So
Yeah.
you would have to train them. That's fascinating.
Well, and that's something that we're going to get into a little bit later here, is that Gamma sends my mind spinning with ideas about, like, not transhumanism exactly, but certainly the sci-fi ideas of artificial personhood.
It's a little unclear exactly what's the deal with these E-series robots. It's strange because obviously they're a big deal in this story, but Eggman builds them up and puts a lot of work into them, but there isn't really a whole lot of explanation about them. They're special, but he doesn't treat them all that differently than any other badnik. It's a little weird. I'll get a little more into it later, but it's just strange that you don't get a whole lot of background. It's told very lightly. I guess it makes sense because as Gamma, you wouldn't know what's going on exactly. Eggman may have had some thought process behind it, but
Yeah.
he's very mission oriented in this. You know, puts you in the training range. He's like, oh, hey, why don't you prove who's better by fighting your brother? And then brutally, after you beat him, he's like, great, you get to be in charge on the egg carrier. And Beta, you're kicked out. And then Beta has this moment where he like steps in front of him.
He's
It's
like
funny
a sad
how
puppy eyes.
yeah, it's funny how the E-series have these non-verbal bits of communication, even though they can talk. And then Eggman's like, well, okay, I guess you can come. If nothing else, you can serve as spare parts. This will be ominous.
And like as ominous as that is, and also funny, it's also like I kind of get it because when you fight Beta, and frankly all of the E series fights are like this. Game has 100% unique bosses, one for almost every stage, but they can all just be beaten by spamming the fire button.
Yeah.
It has the same problem as the rival fights.
Yeah, a little bit.
You know, as much as I complain about some of the bosses having, you know, periods of invincibility, I think it might have been better if these bosses had more of that. Not to an excessive degree, but
No, but a little bit of invincibility frames.
all of them except the final one have, you know, seconds of invincibility
Right.
when they should have had, you know, a little bit more.
Sure.
Yeah, so the early story is pretty straightforward. It's mostly characterizing just how Eggman treats his creations and pits them against each other, and it's good stuff. And I think that it's especially good for this game because we've not seen a lot of Eggman's personality in this game beyond wahaha in the other stories. But you know, this really shows that like he really is kind of a miserable person even on his own terms, where he just takes delight in hurting his own creations.
Yeah, really, Eggman doesn't make use of the thinking so much of the E series. I feel like more he just gave them, you know, complex personalities so that he could line them all up on the egg carrier and give a grand announcement about the next mission.
Yeah, that's in character.
The mission in this case being to punk Big the Cat and during the Froggy theft mission.
Also, why the heck are the robots lined up in the order of E104, E102 to E103, and E105? Epsilon, get in your place.
But yes, you go to Emerald Coast, and they have to alter the design because you're not fast enough to go through Sonic's loops.
That's funny that they had to do that for practical reasons, but I like that, you know, it makes it a different stage. No, it would have felt pretty different regardless with Gamma, I think, but it's
really
still
short.
interesting. Yeah, it is sadly short.
A lot of Gamma's levels have kind of that problem.
I agree. Before we we went there, though, I actually stopped and decided, wait a minute, what happens if I talk to the NPCs as Gamma? And their reactions are amazing.
Oh, I
They
didn't
ra-
think to
they
do that.
they range from don't kill me, like that's almost a quote, to one of the little kids being like, oh wow, a robot, and one guy is just like, yo, it's a sick costume.
I like that guy. That guy's my favorite.
Emma was a cosplayer all along.
Yo, I've never seen a cosplay of any E-Series unit. That would be a rad idea if somebody
That
knows
would
how to
be
do that.
cool.
I'm sure it probably exists, but
Not common, at least.
yeah.
But, yes. After Emerald Coast, we get another inexplicable Tikal flashback, and at this point, I'm just wondering if she just throws these flashbacks at anybody who stands in the right place.
Yeah,
All the like non-named characters that went through these same experiences.
Oof.
I have the same note, which is I think that Tikal is so desperate that she's just trying to recruit anyone, basically.
You know,
Like the little kids that accidentally walk past those areas.
that's what I was thinking, is like, are the NPCs seeing these things and we just don't notice?
Probably. I mean,
Probably.
the Tikal orbs are all over the place.
That's true. So does Tikal just help people with their daily lives as well then, if they happen to walk through her orb?
No, they tried to get them to go to the
Go to Misty
mission
Room.
objectives.
Yeah. That was like,
That-
wow, I lost my car keys, and she's
That's
like,
why the
hey,
research
the ice key
teams-
has been dropped.
That's why the research team's headed towards Mystic Ruins.
Oh, it all makes
sense.
sense. She actually is helping them, though, if you think about it.
I guess, yeah.
In this flashback sequence, though, there's an odd moment where Tikal, past Tikal, which it's surreal because you've got future Tikal as a spirit and past Tikal both there sometimes. But past Tikal is like, oh, sorry, I thought you were one of them, to Gamma before addressing them. Like, did she think that Gamma was an echidna? I'm confused.
You know.
I mean,
think-
there
like
is
you
a
do.
there is a precedent in the Sonic franchise for things that don't look the same, looking the same to characters.
True.
It's just like legally blind.
I think I'm gonna say that Tikal was standing there with the Chow, and she heard Gamma coming up behind and thought it was one of the villagers.
Clank, clank, clank. Wow, what are they carrying today?
I mean, all echidnas make like servo noises, right?
I mean, you know.
Listen, that ceremonial garb
And
is
just say
heavy.
pick up, put down.
Oh, I was gonna note that. That is hilarious that he does that.
Mhm.
She tells us to back off from the Chow, so it's like, why did you bring us here?
That's past Tikal.
I
Mhm.
guess, but then she just tells us, like, oh yeah, Chaos guards the Chow. So she's obviously not, like, doesn't think it's that big a deal that we're here, so I don't know.
Maybe she just wants to make a friend. She's just making small talk.
I guess. What does Pastikal assume that the robot is? A golem?
A weird looking echidna, clearly.
She doesn't
Yeah.
have much exposure.
This was
to
before they
the
invented
world at
glasses.
large.
Exactly. Tikal
I
just has
think-
really bad eyesight.
You know, makes about as much sense as anything.
I've never seen fan art of Tikal with glasses. That would look cute. It just annoys me, just in that this has absolutely nothing to do with Gamma's actual story. At least for the others, they
Yeah.
have some relation to the ongoing plot. Gamma is a story about AI sentience, and it has nothing to do with this.
So we can get it.
Well, they throw it into all the stories, and we've already talked about how that's kind of
Yeah.
not ideal.
This is one of the least related, though, so...
I mean, why'd you send Big the cat there?
At least Big lives near the temple.
So does Gamma, if you think about it.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah.
Alright, done with flashback. So,
So after being sent back, Gamma does have Froggy.
yes, so we get back from this, and we get back to the other E-Series arguing over which of their frogs is the real Froggy.
Right, and you get to see all these differently colored frogs.
Yeah, only time in the game that you see those models, so it's exclusive content.
Well, that's
Yeah,
how we know Froggy is not the only frog in existence.
I guess so.
I was worried. I thought that there were no other frogs in the universe.
I mean, it could be a legitimate concern.
Maybe the universe is a frog.
One of my
I would not be
favorites.
surprised if there was just somehow no other frogs.
I mean, yeah.
We've seen weirder.
I guess there's no other echidnas, so...
Oh yeah.
Because they went to war with the frogs.
Yeah,
Oh.
oh, yeah.
The deep lore.
I mean, it's not impossible, I suppose.
That means that's probably correct.
Makes about as much sense as any other explanation.
We're getting off track. Anyway, so none of them have the right frog except Gamma, and Eggman comes in and goes, dummies, 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 which is really amazing. And then he's like, oh shit, actually, that one does have the right frog.
And then Gamma bounces up and down super excitedly.
Yeah.
Adorable.
And you are right, that he does get the promotion, whereas the others just get teleported off somewhere else, I guess.
There's another bit of subtle non-verbal communication here, as most of them get teleported away, but Delta turns to Gamma for a second before getting moved away, as if they're looking sadly or something.
Well, and that definitely plays into the next scene where Eggman's like, yeah, go get Amy from the prison. And Gamma, I'm not exactly sure what happens here. It looks like the roundabout thing on the middle of the floor turns him to another room, even though that thing normally never spins at all.
That is how it appears, but also Eggman just said go over there and didn't really point at a door in particular, so...
Yeah, but he goes in the wrong door and walks in on Beta being taken apart, basically.
Yeah, this is what I alluded
Yeah.
to. He was serious about the spare parts remark.
Probably the most awkward thing you could walk in on.
It would be traumatic to see for a human.
I
Gamma-
mean, yeah.
I mean, as far as we know, it was also traumatic for Gamma.
I assume it was probably traumatic
Oh,
for Gamma.
100%. But Gamma has this completely sort of monotone, this is the wrong room reaction to it.
He has to hide the pain.
Well,
Yeah,
this is
Gamma
be-
can't laugh through the pain, so Gamma has to find other ways to mask it.
Ah, yes.
Well, this is before Gamma's feelings are unlocked shortly anyway.
Yeah, after this, directly after this, we get the Amy scene, and it's much better built up here because we've actually been with Gamma, and he's a badnik, and so she's talking to him, and they sort of flash on screen that the animal inside him is feeling empathy, so he lets her out.
Yeah, I don't remember how much we touched on it in Amy's story, but Gamma's freak out when Amy is just like, no, I won't give you the bird. And he's like, does not compute in a super cliche way and like vibrates and malfunctions. Comes off pretty cheesy. But yes, it is actually the animal. I don't know how easy it is to tell that, but it's kind of funny the way it's presented.
Well, I mean, in this version, they flash the bird on screen, so you can at least see it, but yeah. And this is the thing that I think is cool, is that at this point, you know, it's like, oh, you're making him have doubts. And I think that this is what makes Gamma unique as a badnik, is that it's this specific coincidence that it's one bird and the other bird that he is able to overrun his programming, and not all other badniks can necessarily do that.
Well, it's bizarre. Honestly, Gamma's story always confused me because, you know, we got the comics and we got robotization, and I could totally see a scenario like that there. But then we've got the games and we've got just robots powered by animals. And 99% of the time, they're completely separate and not really intertwined beyond just as a power source. This is the only exception in the entire series, I believe. So it's a very weird anomaly. It's like a bridge between the two concepts.
Mm-hmm.
I really like
I could see this being the reason why Eggman didn't do that in the future.
True.
Indeed.
Well, the thing is, I don't know what he did. I mean, it's like, I guess it's a complex robot combined with the animal power source.
Yeah, I'm making the assumption that it was like intentional that the animal has some influence on the robot in this one. And if it is intentional, I can see why, like, within Eggman's head, it would not be replicated.
It's not represented extremely well in gameplay, but I think it would make a lot of sense to have badniks be sort of a smarter kind of robot than just like egg pawns or whatever.
Yeah, I suppose so. A lot of the badniks do drop animals that they are based off of anyway, so that
Right.
does kind of make sense. It's just one of those things that they don't really talk about very much, and I feel like there's a lot of room for expanding this story. I guess it's interesting because it leaves for lots of speculation, but I feel like they still could have, well, in the space of a game, I think they did about as good as they could have, probably, for the time.
Yeah. So, after this, you get a basic bitch fight with Sonic. It's as easy as all the rest.
How is Eggman just like distracted or something? How does he not notice that Gamma failed to get the bird from Amy?
I think he just assumed she escaped.
Eggman's just that used to his plans going wrong that he just accepts it.
Well, the thing is, apparently, Eggman is completely oblivious to Gamma's exploits throughout the entire game, which I no, what? Like I've heard this thrown around. It's apparently the idea. I don't agree because that's absurd, but moments like this do support that.
That he just doesn't know that Gamma has developed any consciousness.
Right. I find that improbable, but we'll get more into that later. This is a weird moment. I'll somewhat forgive it. You're right. It does make sense that you just assume that Amy escaped and
The rest of the
very
game,
within
though,
her
yeah.
abilities. Yes, you get to shoot Sonic a few times.
It's payback. It's payback for making me play Sonic 2 8-bit.
Ah, yes. I can
Very-
agree with that
Very
payback.
random, but I'll take it. Anything to try and make that better. What absolutely shocked me was that after this, it's completely reversed, and Gamma is about to end Sonic, and then Amy saves Sonic's life. I did not expect that.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that, because, I think that having Amy save Gamma after Gamma saved Amy would make more sense, but instead they have Amy save Sonic from Gamma.
I think both work. And again, this is a confusing what actually happened sort of a question. I didn't realize how many contradictory details there are in these different stories. Because if you have Amy save Gamma, then that's, sweet, and that could certainly sort of change his mind. But on the other hand, in this version of events, she appeals to Gamma's good nature. She's like, I know that you are good, you let me go, so you can let Sonic live. And so that has sort of a different connotation, but it could also, I think, lead to his rebellion.
Well, either way, he backs down and then just kind of leaves while floating through the air. Which we didn't talk about the jet booster upgrade, but that glide is really, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, about that. First of all, yeah, and the jet booster itself is nice. I like it. But there's something confusing about this. You'll observe you run over the water when you're going towards Emerald Coast that Gamma has a flight mode where they just hover over the water, which is kind of clever. That's a great way to the water problem. But it raises another question, which is you can just hover over that indefinitely. So fine, I guess. Maybe it's just a hover thing. But in this cutscene, he literally uses it to lift off initially, and then he jet boosters down later. But you can't do that in gameplay. Like,
No.
what?
Well, and the important part of the cutscene is that Gamma evaluates everything he's seen up to this point and decides, I'm gonna go rogue and blow up the other E-Series robots to free the animals.
Heck yeah.
Android 16 moments.
I
Yeah.
haven't
Yeah.
had, sure, whatever that refers to.
He's
I haven't-
going to throw his fist at people.
Which is
Does
confusing.
Gamma
Go ahead,
have-
Bob.
I guess he kind of does. Does he have a gun for an arm, or does he hold a gun? I can't remember.
I
He
think it's
has-
a gun for an arm, right?
Does
He
have
has
another?
one arm
He does.
that's arm and one arm that's gun.
Oh, that's right. Okay. So you can pick stuff up now that I'm thinking about it. I haven't had a reason to mention that this game has recaps up until now, but I'll bring it up now because I noted these recaps because I was curious about how they would change. And obviously, all the recaps are written from the perspective of the characters, which is really neat. But Gamma starts out saying E102, codename Gamma, I'm a robot. I was created by Dr. Robotnik. And I like that at this point in the game, he drops that part and just says, I'm E102 Gamma. It doesn't mention his origin.
That's pretty clever. I haven't been notating the recaps because I didn't get any of the recaps because I played all these stories in one go.
Well, I
Or
stopped
each
on
of these
purpose
stories,
because I was
not-
curious about this one. It is actually an excessive amount of effort because they change the recap like after every little thing you do, pretty much. It's
Right.
crazy. It's a lot of extra writing that I think a lot of players won't see.
Yeah. This leads us to... Well, it has the same puzzle to get in, but we have to go to Windy Valley with Gamma on our first E-Series mission.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. It's a little short, but it is not that short because it's basically Sonic's section, except Gamma starts earlier in the level, which I think that's the first time we've seen that, where someone starts earlier than Sonic's section. But because Gamma is heavier and has more firepower, he doesn't get buffeted by the wind, and so he just blows up the caves to carve a path instead.
Mm.
As one does.
This is the first stage where it becomes clear that Gamma is overpowered as heck when it comes to item boxes, because you can just launch a million missiles at all of them and collect 8 billion rings and a million shields, and it's amazing.
I really like this level because it sort of gradually slopes downward, which means that you can use Gamma's hover to cross a lot of it while flying, and it just feels very good.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a good stage after obtaining the upgrade, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the boss Delta is as much a joke as the rest.
I mean, that's to be expected at this point. Most of the bosses in this game are kind of a joke.
Some of them are really long and annoying, but
That's
yeah,
also true.
these
It's
ones,
the rival bosses that
yeah.
are
Especially the rival bosses.
pathetic. Most of the other bosses aren't, and I
I mean,
guess
I'd say
these.
just most of them are. Like, not to the point of the rival bosses, but I would say most of them are.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay. Being really easy but short is different than being really easy but not short. Like when you can almost blink and miss them, it feels different than just being like, okay, and just twiddling my thumbs for a minute or two. You're right, of course, that the Egg Hornet is trivial, but it still feels different than these. That said, this is the first boss that comes up at the end of a stage within the stage, which is really interesting, actually. It doesn't have too much difference in regular gameplay, but when you're doing the extra missions for Gamma, it adds a little bit of extra tenseness because, these boss fights aren't too hard, but if you just screw it up and then get hit by the boss at the end, then you could lose your rings and screw up the second mission. And you've got to really make sure you're doing it efficiently for the timed mission. So it's just interesting to have that thrown in to the stage, and it's all one package.
Yeah, but after this, I don't. Is there much of a cutscene between this and Red Mountain, or do you just kind of go there?
I don't
think you
remember if
just
there's a
go there.
cutscene. I don't think there's a cutscene between these.
And
I
unfortunately,
will.
we do
Sorry.
not see the return of the monkey destruction button. We instead just
So
blow up
sad.
the. We just blow up the garden. It opens.
That is the one flaw with Gamma's story, honestly.
Truly.
That's why the kids wanted to see Sonic with a gun. A few other remarks, though, before we quite go into Red Mountain. First of all, I like that Gamma has a unique victory line when he rescues, in his own words, each of the E series. He names them and says their rescue was complete. That's nice. But second of all, I'm wondering, what are the E series doing in these locations? There's reasons for the other ones after this, but why why is Delta in Windy Valley and Epsilon in Red Mountain? They're just kind of there. It doesn't
Uh,
make any sense. The other ones have purposes, but these why did Eggman send them here? Did he literally just say like, get out of my face and they just left?
yeah, they chose to come here. Delta wanted to go to Windy Valley because it's pretty, and Epsilon wanted to go to Red Mountain to investigate the ghosts.
No, it's the
Man.
music.
So,
That too.
oh, the music, yes. I did like hearing the rad guitar in Red Mountain again. The lava section is a great section to take from the stage. But this touches a little bit on the fact that I am really sad that obviously Gamma is the star of the show, and Beta gets a little bit too. Zeta gets like half of something. But I wish that we got to, actually have more insight in the other E series. I guess the reason we don't is because they don't get to go beyond their programming or whatever. But, Eggman has a whole line of robots. I would like to see them have like their own objectives and their own personalities. I think that would be really rad because they're all supposed to be similarly as advanced. Although maybe Eggman went even cheaper. And that's why Beta has like a bit of stuff that we're going to get to, and Gamma obviously is a star, but then the rest of them are so cheap they don't get anything. They're like pretty much just great robots.
He couldn't afford to give them any kind of sentience.
Maybe that's it.
So
And
what,
we
what I,
established that Eggman is like in crippling debt.
True.
that is true.
True.
In Heroes, he's
True.
broke. So what I'm hearing is that either Eggman spread himself too thin, or the developers did.
Well, it's definitely that because it's weird. You get cool setup in this story with Eggman being just Eggman, and he talks about how he's made these special E series and he uses them for this very special mission, retrieving a frog that ate part of Chaos apparently, and that's neat. But at this point, this is a good time to bring up Eggman has disappeared from the story completely. Which that's the reason he doesn't know, apparently. Which again, I would like to think he does, because that then at least explains now why the badniks are attacking you. But it's kind of disappointing. Like, really, he just like forgot about them all, even the one that was supposed to be super successful. It's just weird. I guess to
Well,
be fair, it was a very busy day. He got beaten like 6 times in a row by Tails and Sonic again and Knuckles and everyone.
he
All big
does
Eggman smackdown.
he does
But
learn about Gamma at some point, because the E1000s and Chaos Gamma exist, so it's just maybe he doesn't know right now.
yeah, it's just a little disappointing, because there are so many times in other media and in later games where Eggman gets to, do the classic "I created you, you must listen to me,"
Yeah, Gamma
and then
Gamma is the Frankenstein story, but you're having the monster just walk away and never talk to Dr. Frankenstein again.
it's very disappointing.
It's a shame, but they'll do more stuff with stories like this in the future, so no harm, no foul for me.
Fair enough, I suppose. Back to the gameplay. I do like blowing up rocks in order to create platforms across lava. That's rad.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool.
Explosions are always good.
Yeah.
And what's more full of explosions than the egg carrier? Because it has crashed into the ocean, and we decide to go there because we're like, oh, Zeta is there. We head into Hot Shelter here, which is easily the longest stage with the most unique content, I would say, for Gamma.
Oh, definitely. It seems like the other stages were like tech demos. They were super short and just showed off kind of what he could do. And this is the only stage and the last stage too, so like that's a shame. But yeah, finally, it's a stage with lots of interesting stuff going on. And really in the other ones, I mean, maybe if you're a kid, but the time limit I don't think is going to be much of a problem at all. This one, it does become.
It can if you're not thinking on your toes, yeah. I think I pushed it pretty close, but I didn't run out at any point. I used to run out all the time.
Yeah, the stage is full of gimmicks that are meant to slow you down.
Yeah, I think it's
Like,
the one time I ran out of time was on this stage.
yeah, like I said, the other ones are pretty
Think me too.
trivial if you are, somewhat of a gamer. But this one has like slow cranes that take forever to pick you up.
Oh god,
Um,
yeah.
that was kind of annoying, but I get the purpose. And the one thing that I actually kind of like is there's this one circular section and then a huge slope that you have to rush up in order to leap a gap. But if you fail, then you just have to go all around the loop again.
Well, and even like Amy's gear climbing room is in this level, and you can glide across it, but if you're not on your toes, you have to climb the ladder, and Gamma is the slowest climber in the game.
Oh, yeah.
And also, near the end of the level, there's this kind of awesome sort of monorail, not a monorail, but a tram sequence where you're moving across different train cars as they fly through. I don't know how big the egg carrier is supposed to be if it can go that far, but it's really cool.
Yeah, it's got a ton of moving parts. We didn't really touch on that because there wasn't much reason to, but this thing is like ridiculously intricate. It's kind of insane, sort of how all out Eggman went into this, given how, I mean, it's fairly important in the story, but I mean, like, why did he bother getting chaos and all that? I mean, yeah, that is useful, but like, literally, this thing is insane. He could have like taken over the world with this if it wasn't for, blue hedgehogs and whatnot. But
Well,
I
because
guess it's
Eggman's
just
gonna do it, he's gonna overdo it.
yeah, he's gonna overdo it. It makes sense.
True.
But it's funny because like it almost feels like an afterthought. It's funny, but it is crazy all the stuff that's in it. I like the part at the end of this stage where you fall down a shaft and there are a bunch of kikis just in circles, and you can just go ultra ham with the targeting and get a gajillion extra seconds.
It's the ultimate spin to win.
Yep.
Provided they don't hit you while you're trying, which is what happened to me.
Well, obviously.
Well, yeah.
Well, and that's the introduction of something that I hesitate to call it a mechanic, but it's a recurring trope that we'll see in Sonic level design, which is free-falling sequences where you have to dodge shit while you're on the way down.
Oh, yeah.
This exact setup will come up in Tails and Eggman stories, I believe.
Do you
They
like
went through
Eternal
multiple
Engine?
times.
No, okay.
Yeah.
I need to cool off. We're not talking about it yet. Anyway, yeah, Hot Shelter fun, and it also has a unique boss where you actually have to try, which is E105 Zeta, and he's made out of Dreamcasts.
Oh, it's right. He
Yes,
is made
that
on
is true. If you
Dreamcast.
look closely, he is. It's a cute little Easter egg.
Sega
This,
couldn't sell enough of them, so they started building their robots.
oh my gosh, imagine.
Eggman made the Dreamcast.
Yeah, in universe, the Dreamcast is an actual failed console,
That's
and
why Eggman went broke.
yeah,
He
it was a
the
scheme,
Dreamcast.
not as successful as casinos.
You just stick with the casinos, to
Could have
be
just stuck with the
honest.
casinos, but being Eggman, he's like, I'll dump a ton of money in a game console, and it didn't work. It's perfect. But back to Zeta here. This is a fascinating concept here, right here. Having Zeta like robbed of their autonomy and just used as like a computer, a stationary mechanism, I assume, to fly the egg carrier. Although it never gets used, I guess because it gets downed. I assume this was some sort of experimental project or something that Eggman decided to use Zeta for. But once again, it's very strange that we don't get to see it at all. Literally, we just come here like, oh, guess what? Did you know that Zeta has been fused into the egg carrier? Yeah, fun fact. He'll blow him up. It's just weird. It's like, I feel like there was a bunch of extra stuff in this story they had to cut or something.
Yeah.
Hey, what it means is that the egg carrier itself is a badnik.
Oh, true.
Oh, huh.
But yes, so this fight, he has a bunch of cannons on him, and they shoot homing missiles at you, and you have to blow them up before you get hit.
So this is weird. For some reason, when I first fought this boss, like I had some trouble with it. But this time when I fought it, I beat it in like 2 seconds. I don't even know how I did it.
Well, it's because you're on a constant rotating platform, and because he has cannons all around the edge of him, and you have to blow up each individual cannon, you may not actually see the ones that you actually are missing.
Yeah, that's probably it. I probably just got lucky.
That was what always gave me
Get them
trouble.
all.
That and the fact that the missiles home in on you, and sometimes you'll be trying to target the cannon, but you'll target the missiles instead.
Yeah, but if you don't get super lucky and just end it in 2 seconds, it's a pretty good boss fight, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say it's one of Gamma's best.
Yeah.
But I can't say that it is his best, because once Gamma finishes the stage, he moves out. He leaves through the pool room, which I still don't know how that works, but whatever.
Oh shoot, you're right. Okay, you know what? You know what? Hot shelter. Literally, one of the gimmicks is you raise and lower the water, so we just lowered it.
Okay, sure.
There you go.
But we see his last boss, which is E101 Mark II, who flies toward the central engine area of the outdoor part of the egg carrier, and he waits there for you.
Yeah. Before he does show up, though, Gamma thinks to themselves, and they're like, "Units remaining, Gamma," and he looks at themselves. Ooh, foreshadowing.
I'm the only one left, yeah. But then Beta shows up and he's like, "Oh, it's time for a showdown."
Man,
Yeah.
this fight.
This is one of the best bosses in the whole game. It is Beta souped up with a fair but not like overwhelmingly hard challenge, and one of the coolest robot designs, and easily my favorite boss theme in the game. Maybe one of my favorite boss themes in the series. It is called Crazy Robo. It fucking slaps.
I don't remember that.
I'm glad
to be
you said
honest.
that. Shame on you, Bruce.
I'm
Listen to
surprised I
it.
don't.
Listen to it on its own. It is everything that Devin says it is.
I mean, I'll take your word on that.
Because
it's very good.
it uses Gamma's leitmotif, and it brings across sort of the weight of the actual story that you've gone through, but it also is just completely funky the entire time. It almost doesn't sound like a boss theme, even though it also does. It's crazy.
Yeah, you put it better than I could. But man, you know what? Do you ever get that thing where you've just played something too many times and you're like, man, it's just too easy now. I wish I could play it, but without knowledge of how to beat it. Because this is what happens with this boss fight now. I still appreciate it, but I'm just sad because it's trivial to me now. E101, that's awesome design. His Mark II form.
It is pretty cool.
It's interesting because it's like very very subtly done. I think here I like it more though because it's a lot easier to pick up and it's actually built up a little bit over time. Obviously at the start, Eggman is like, here's E101, they're your older brother, they're more advanced than you, and then you beat them, and then Eggman's like, oh well, I'll go throw you to rubble, and then E101's like, no, don't leave me behind, and then he's like, okay, sure, and he tears
You
them
will
apart.
pay for this compassion.
Yes, But then he comes back with a new form as if to be like, oh, I'll show you. I'll show you who's really the best. That he had to like change what he was. And so this has some meaning behind it, this redesign. And it is slick. I love how during the fight, if you try to shoot him normally, like you can do with most bosses, he's just like, no, and just backhands the shot.
Yeah, he just, like, Dragon Ball Z reflects it like it's a ki blast. It's awesome.
Yep.
And yeah, you can only hit him from behind, and you have to wait for him to charge at you, but he's got a bunch of attacks in his arsenal featuring, like, different kinds of really fast missiles, and I especially like when he flies all the way up behind the camera and shoots the giant energy blasts at you from above.
That is so awesome because it is perfectly frantic, given that before he does that, I don't know if this is like certain or it just always happens this way, but he usually fires off some missiles before then. And so then you're running from those, and the missiles are interesting because they home in on you, but you can destroy them by shooting them. So you have to try to run away, but also turn around and shoot them, or else they're never going to get off your tail.
Them, yeah.
Yeah. And so usually you have some of those already on you when he starts doing this, and then it gets madness.
When it follows a line of progression where he does one blast and then comes back down, and then the second time he does it, he does like 5 blasts in a row, but the 5th one he charges for a really long time, so it makes an even bigger explosion. Like, this is the first time that, like, narrative stakes have actually been weaved into a boss in this game, and it's spectacular.
Yeah.
Which is funny, because it's like, if you know what to do, he's not hard at all. But, so, you beat Beta, and he goes down, he falls to the ground, and Gamma is, like, walking toward him, and I'm not really sure why, because, like, if he doesn't explode, why would you assume that he's down? But whatever. But Beta cheap shots the fuck out of you by, like, playing dead, and then when Gamma gets close, he bolts up and creams you right in the face. It's great.
Yes, this is like the cherry on top. Again, completely wordlessly, which I think is probably better than if they had tried to add dialogue to this.
Oh, absolutely.
This totally cements the idea that Beta is just an envious bastard.
Yeah, it's really good. And in a moment that genuinely shocked me as a kid, I'm pretty sure I knew what death was as a kid by this point, but not for very long. So what completely shocked me is Gamma does not make it. He walks away from this because he does destroy Beta. Beta explodes, and then Gamma walks away. He kind of limps away, which not sure how that works with a robot, but whatever. Maybe his leg servos are acting up, but
yeah.
You know, he starts limping away and getting worse, and he starts, like, stuttering, basically, and, like, seeing flashes, visions of the bird pals. And this is interesting because, you know, we've complained about Sonic Adventure 1's cutscene animations, and that they're still pretty bad. But here's the thing, janky robotic animations actually work very well for a janky robot.
Yeah, that works well.
That is true.
And this scene, like, is so built into my memory of him stumbling away and having flashes of his memories, and then just at that moment he realizes that the bird inside Beta and the bird inside that Amy had and the bird inside him is the other bird, and there's this moment where he, like, simultaneously tries to turn and look back but also keels over because he can't move anymore, is, like, the most convincing piece of character animation in the whole game. Like, that, it's weirdly subtle, but it's great.
Yeah, there's a lot of subtlety in cutscenes throughout Gamma's story, as I mentioned, so it is the perfect end. I didn't realize how, like, intentionally sad this was framed. Before we started this, you talked about, like, oh, I don't know how much I'm going to talk about how this affected me. But I was like, did it really affect you? I mean, I guess it makes sense when you're playing as a younger kid. But playing this again, I'm like, oh, no, it actually is done pretty well. And, like, legitimately ends on a really low note. I mean, there's a bit of hope with the birds, right? But no words at all. Sad music. Gamma dies. It's almost a downer ending.
It's interesting because I don't even know if I'd say it's a downer ending. I mean, it kind of is, but it's also, like, triumphant. Like, the fact that Gamma has the biggest explosion of any robot, and it has the piano rendition of his theme, it's so good. Like, it still makes me tear up a little, as silly as that may sound. And it's weirdly nuanced, because it's like, this is a guy, but it's also kind of had to parasitize a living creature to exist, and it's like learning the value of life and sacrificing himself in a way. It's crazy. You can read so much into it because it doesn't have any dialogue.
Right, yes. As much as I criticize that, it is certainly a strength, in a sense, how much they did leave it open. Because, I mean, I always wondered, Gamma is a weird character because they seem very matter of fact about most of what they do, even after they decide to betray Robotnik. And so there's so many different ways you can look at this. On the one hand, it almost seems like they don't care, about themselves. They're just on a mission to free all the trapped animals. As I said, they were ready to just, assumedly, they were going to destroy themselves before Beta showed up. But at the end here, as you said, they even in their last movements, they're struggling to do something, and they're cut off. So it's like, did they have a will to live of their own? And so it leaves it ambiguous. It's fair to say, is this a downer ending? Because who knows? It all depends on what you think of Gamma. Like, were they alive? And also depends on, did they have a will to live? And so there's nuance to it.
Extremely good. I truly adore this robot and his little story. And I think that this set... It's something that can only be told in the Sonic universe and featuring the Sonic characters. It's something that there's nothing else like it in the series, pretty much.
Yeah, and I will have to say, as sad as it is, I'm very glad that they didn't bring back this great character like they might do with other great characters they kill off.
Yeah, I'm sure they won't do that.
And just let him stay dead, because that's what you do with a good character death.
I mean, in fairness, he's technically in Sonic Shuffle, but I don't think that's considered canon.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And the other thing is that, they can just build another shell that looks like Gamma, so it's like, if they really need to bring back that design, but it's fine. They don't need to roboticize the same bird twice, so...
Well, I mean, they do bring back the design, sort of, later, and then there's obviously a spiritual successor to this character later also, but it's not actually the same character, which is what really would irk me. So I'm just saying they did it perfectly.
Well, and the spiritual successor is a character much better suited to continuing to exist, who I also love. So, that is Gamma's playthrough. We end with his theme, which I think is just called Ida 102 Gamma. It's the only character theme in the game, other than Eggman's, I suppose, that doesn't have any sort of lyrics, unless you consider the guy in the background going beep bop boop as lyrics.
It's robot lyrics, and I think I mentioned this before, but man, I love this character theme.
I love it so much, because
chilling.
It's great. It's like melancholic, but it starts and ends with that like robot warbling, so it's sort of like dissociative. It's really weird. But yeah, it's Gamma's great. We like Gamma.
Yeah, I just noticed it now, but it's strange. We mentioned Big the Cat a little bit here, but as much as Big the Cat is just sort of there amongst everything else that is happening rather than being intertwined in it like some of the other characters, Gamma is almost more so that way, if you think about it. He is only necessary in the plot for tiny moments, but otherwise it's just his own story.
Yeah.
I think that Gamma builds up the theme of the game when it comes to valuing life, but his interaction with the plot is almost nothing, yeah.
That just dawned on me. You would think that an Eggman robot would be more important, but just pointing it out, it's certainly a better way of doing that than alternatives.
Well, we have now gone through 6 characters in this game. One of them is dead. That's fine, don't worry about it. But now it's time for the other 5 to all crash into each other, because next time on Deep Dive Zone, we are finishing off Sonic Adventure for good with the final story of Chaos and Sonic and Tikal and Eggman and stuff. It's going to be great, and maybe terrible, I don't know. But with all that said, thank you all so much for watching. If you'd like to share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, that would be great. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, or criticism, you can reach us at any of the resources shown on screen, and then some. There's even more in the description. With all that said, thank you so much for watching. Have a great night, we'll see you next Sunday, and take care.